my rights, WrestleMania should be the stage for the biggest, best, and in theory, most memorable matches WWE has to offer. I mean, they literally call it the grandest stage of them all, so you would think that any match lucky enough to grace it would fit the bill. This isn't exactly true, of course, as even WWE's revered flagship presentation has played host to a bunch of matches designed to pad the runtime, provide a piss break, or get some stars on the card so they can get themselves a nice WrestleMania payoff. Quick disclaimer before we start, we are not including anything from the cursed WrestleMania 36, as COVID wreaked havoc on that weird show, and I think we would all like it to stay forgotten. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 totally random WrestleMania matches you don't remember. Join us. Number 10, the ECW Originals versus the New Breed at WrestleMania 23. There were 3 WWE brands around the time of WrestleMania 23, with the rebooted ECW standing alongside Raw and SmackDown. The extremists had long since fallen out of favour by this point, however, and with ECW champion Bobby Lashley involved in the much-hyped Battle of the Billionaires, WWE opted to present a sole 8-man tag affair as the only proper ECW contest on the card. In it, the ECW Original squad of Sabu, the Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, and Rob Van Dam took on the New Breed, which consisted of Kevin Thorne, Marcus Corvon, Elijah Burke, and Matt Striker. Clearly presented as a cool-down match between the World Heavyweight title scrap between Batista and The Undertaker and the Battle of the Billionaires, the Originals and the New Breed were given almost 7.5 minutes to play with and rushed through a bog-standard bout that really would have been more memorable had it come with an Extreme Rules stipulation. Hey, it was fine for what it was, I guess, but didn't feature anything especially noteworthy before RVD got the win for his team with a 5-star frog splash. Number 9, the Barbarian versus Tito Santana at WrestleMania 6. Tito Santana has quite the WrestleMania resume, even if he only won one of the 8 matches he had on the main portion of the show. That was at the very first WrestleMania, where Tito had his hand raised following a victory over the Executioner, a masked Buddy Rose, in the first ever WrestleMania match. Other memorable matches for Santana at the show of shows include a tag bout with the Funk Brothers at Mania 2 and Strikeforce dropping the tag straps to Demolition at Mania 4. As the 80s became the 90s, however, El Matador found himself being used to put other, newer stars over. For example, at WrestleMania 6, where he was entrusted to make the Barbarian look like a monster. Really, that shouldn't have been much of a task because, I mean, Christ, just look at the man. Having just split up with Powers of Pain partner the Warlord, the Barbarian was in line for a singles push and got a convincing win over Tito in about 4.5 minutes. Convincing, perhaps. Memorable, not so much, as this took place slap bang in the middle of a 15-match card and had no story going in or coming out of it. Number 8, Bull Buchanan and Big Boss Man versus the Godfather and D'Lo Brown at WrestleMania 2000. WrestleMania 2000 felt like the quintessential let's make sure we get everyone on the card event. After all, there was only one singles match the entire night, and that was a catfight between Terry Runnels and the Cat, which featured a bunch of extras in the form of managers Mae Young and the Fabulous Moolah, along with special guest ref Val Venus. Despite having a wealth of talent and several more exciting options, WWE opted to open the first WrestleMania of the new millennium with this slow slog of a tag match. You can sort of understand the psychology behind putting the Godfather on first, considering how immensely over he was, plus he and D'Lo were wrapped at ringside by Ice-T, so it was certainly a high-energy start to proceedings. And then, the bell rang. Because honestly, this was 9 minutes that felt twice that, and it was so boring that it did the opposite of what a good curtain raiser should do and actually subdued the crowd. The kicker? The heel team went over, further deflating anyone who was still awake to witness the finish. Number 7, The Shield versus Kane and the New Age Outlaws at WrestleMania 30. Bearing in mind just how many WrestleMania epics the Shield members have competed in, well, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins anyway, it's funny that the first 2 Mania matches for the Hounds of Justice were so utterly forgettable. In their Mania debut at number 29, Reigns, Rollins and Ambrose kicked things off with a victory over the formidable duo of Randy Orton, Sheamus and The Big Show. A year later, they met the not-so-formidable New Age Outlaws and Corporate Kane in a match that was just a total afterthought. Put on second, the 6 men were given given barely 3 minutes for what amounted to a one-sided squash that ended with the Shield standing tall. Fair play for putting over the babyface unit so strongly, but on a show that included Daniel Bryan's quest for the WWE title and Brock Lesnar breaking the streak among other memorable matches and moments, it's really no surprise that this gets lost in the mix. Number 6, The New Day versus the Brawling Brutes at WrestleMania 38. On the March 11th, 2022 episode of SmackDown, Big E suffered what could very well turn out to be a career-ending neck injury when he took a suplex on the outside of the ring from Ridge Holland. While absolutely nobody would ever want the beloved New Day member to suffer such a horrible injury, the incident did, at the very least, offer a ready-made storyline heading into WrestleMania 38, which took place a few weeks later. Because at Mania, Big E's besties, Kofi, Kingston and Xavier Woods would be gunning for revenge against Holland and his Brawling Brutes brother-in-arms, Sheamus. It could have been an emotionally charged and meaningful mid-card attraction, but WWE evidently didn't see things that way. To start with, the match was supposed to take place on night 1, but was cut and moved to night 2 due to timing issues. When it did go on, it was over almost as soon as it began, as the Brutes scored the dub after a measly 1 minute and 43 seconds. The power of positivity isn't really helping me with this one. Number 5, Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart versus D'Lo Brown and Test at WrestleMania 15. Russo-mania was running wild in 1999, bro, as that year's showcase of the Immortals ended up better resembling an overbooked extended edition of Monday Night Raw. There were certainly some noteworthy happenings on the pay-per-view, like Butterbean KOing Bart Gunn and The Undertaker hanging Big Boss Man. I said noteworthy, didn't say good. The tag straps were up for grabs in the second match of the evening as Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart defended against the mismatched team of D'Lo Brown and Test. The challengers had earned the right by being the last 2 men in a pre-show battle royal, but they weren't friends, so would they be able to coexist? Such intrigue, Mr. Russo. Anyway, this was a 4-minute match with really nothing to distinguish it as being in any way special. Commentator Jerry Lawler, meanwhile, was more than a little preoccupied with manager Deborah's breasts. So before the action had time to go anywhere, it was over as the champs retained, the challengers bickered, and everybody quickly moved on. And you know what? I think I'll do the same. Number 4, Dino Bravo versus the Texas Tornado at WrestleMania 7. The early WrestleManias may have featured some blockbuster main events and major stars in other gripping matches that acted as the blow-offs to long-running feuds, but they also contained more than their fair share of filler. WrestleMania 7 is a prime example of this. Yes, Hogan winning the world title for America headlined, and Randy Savage versus the Ultimate Warrior in a retirement match plus the post-match scenes tore the house down, but bouts like Demolition versus Koji Katao and Genichiro Tenryu, Earthquake versus Greg Valentine, and Tito Santana versus the Mountie did little to inspire. The very definition of just a match that happened was the second contest of the evening as the Texas Tornado took on Dino Bravo. Kerry Von Erich was still over and certainly looked the part, but this had no reason for existing, and the action was sub-house show level stuff, with the Tornado finishing things off with a discus punch in 3 minutes and 11 seconds. Interesting note, both of these men would die tragic deaths within 2 years of this match. Nice little fun fact to take us home there. Number 3, The Right to Censor versus Taz and the APA at WrestleMania X7. WrestleMania X7 is still to many the gold standard as far as not just WrestleMania, but pro wrestling pay-per-views are concerned. The beauty of the show was that it really offered something for everyone, from crisp mat wrestling and dangerous stunts to sports entertainment soap opera and an epic main event for the ages. Yeah, something for everyone. And then something else for who I'm not exactly sure. Because stacked up alongside title matches, gimmick matches, and grudge matches was this 6-man pitting Right to Censor members Val Venus, Bull Buchanan, and the Godfather against Bradshaw, Farouk, and Taz. The RTC had been losing steam for months, and there wasn't really that much storyline juice behind this. If anything, it pretty much just served as a way to get Bradshaw and fellow Texan Jacqueline, who accompanied the babyfaces to the ring, in front of the Houston Astrodome crowd. It wasn't terrible by any means, as they kept things energetic enough for the short duration before the future JBL picked up the victory with a clothesline from hell. But it was a throwaway match of little consequence on an otherwise stacked show. Number 2, the Four Corners Tag Team title matches at WrestleMania 20. A 2 for now as we look at the 2 equally forgettable Four Corners Tag title matches WWE offered at Mania 20. In the first, Raw World Tag Team Champions Rob Van Dam and Booker T successfully defended their straps against the Dudley Boys, Garrison Cade and Mark Jindrak, and La Resistance. No shortage of talent on display, but the 8 men were given just shy of 8 minutes, and it was obvious by WWE putting them on second that management didn't see the match as anything other than an arbitrary way to get a bunch of guys on the show, and for Dupree, Conway, Cade, and Jindrak, it would be their only WrestleMania match. In the second, SmackDown's WWE Tag Team Champions Rikishi and Scotty 2 Hotty beat the Basham Brothers, the APA, and the world's greatest tag team. This was another ordinary and unexceptional outing that couldn't hope to capture the attention of a Madison Square Garden crowd who had just put so much energy into mercilessly heckling Goldberg and Brock Lesnar in the match before. There were 12 matches at Mania 20, and this pair were the most by the numbers. Number 1, the Corre versus Kane, Big Show, Santino, Marella, and Kofi Kingston at WrestleMania 27. WrestleMania 27 was far from the most critically acclaimed granddaddy of them all, with lowlights including the weak Miz vs Cena WWE title main event, which had a dodgy finish, and the never-ending disaster that was Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler. There were a couple of things worth watching, in particular The Undertaker's brutal streak-extending no-holds-barred victory over Triple H, but after the show was over, you didn't feel like you had really seen much of consequence. You would also be a liar if you recalled watching the blink-and-you'll-miss-it 8-man between the Corre and the team of Kane, Show, Marella, and Kingston. Kofi, it should be noted, was actually a replacement for Vladimir Kozlov, who had been injured by Wade Barrett and the boys at an Access event the day before. How dare you tease Vladimir Kozlov and not deliver, you bastards? Now, did the switch do anything to affect match quality? Something tells me probably not, as the whole thing was wrapped up in just over 90 seconds. The babyfaces wiped the floor with Barrett, Slater, Gabriel, and Jackson, who couldn't hope to get in any meaningful offense before Show put Heath's lights out with the KO punch. Core blimey. Get it?